Hope you had a great Pesach.
Oh, great.
Good. It seems that the aftertaste of the matzah is still in our mouths, and the extra weight is still around our middles. So we can refer back a little bit to Pesach. There is a custom that at the end of every Yom Tov we have a celebration which is called Ne'ilas HaChag. Just like a Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah concludes the fast. So every Yom Tov we have a Ne'ilah, a conclusion. We kind of wrap up the Yom Tov with a ribbon and a bow and put it to bed, if you will. Is there a remez? Is there a hint to this idea of Ne'ilas HaChag? Rav Gedalia Shor, great Rosh Yeshiva this century, brings the Ramban, and he shows that there is a hint from the Ramban to this idea of Ne'ilas HaChag. This Ramban is in Parshas Vayikra. It says that when Yaakov Avinu was running away from Esav, and he came to the area where Lavan lived, so it says that he came to a place, V'hinei be'er basodeh, there was a well in the field, V'hinei sham shlosha edrei tzon rov tzimaleha, there were 3 flocks of sheep that were crouching by this well, because from this well the sheep would be given to drink. The well was covered with a big stone, and the practice was v'nes v'sham kol ha'adarim, all the flocks would gather, v'golu es ha'even me'al pi ha'be'er, and they would roll off the stone, v'hishku es hatzayin, and then they would give the sheep to drink, v'yeshivu es ha'even al pi ha'be'er l'mekayma, and then they would put the stone back on the well. So this was the daily practice. There was a big stone that covered the well, so the 3 flocks of sheep would gather, and they would remove the stone, water the sheep, and then put the stone back. So this doesn't seem to have great significance here, that there are 3 flocks gathering by the well. So the Ramban writes an amazing thing over here from the Bereshis, and he says that Chazal tell us that this is symbolic. This alludes to something that would happen in the future. This well is a remez, is a hint to the Beis HaMikdash. The 3 flocks that would gather was a hint to the Jewish people who would gather at the Beis HaMikdash 3 times a year. So the 1 flock symbolized the Pesach pilgrims, and the 2nd flock symbolized the Shavuos pilgrims, and the 3rd flock symbolized the Sukkot pilgrims, because 3 times a year we came to the Beis HaMikdash. And we would roll the stone off the well, and from this well we would draw Ruach HaKodesh. We would draw divine inspiration. And the people that came to Yerushalayim for the Aliyah L'Regel, it was a lofty experience. Shebisham hayu shayavim Ruach HaKodesh. They would draw divine inspiration. And then it says that at the end of the regel, V'yeshivu es ha'even, they would put the stone back, Munach l'regel haba, and the well would be then sealed off until the next regel. Now this is a very, very odd thing. As we're talking about the Beis HaMikdash, so during the regel they would draw Ruach HaKodesh, and then they would put the stone back. So between the regalim, you could not draw Ruach HaKodesh, you couldn't draw the same inspiration, but the well was then ready for the next regal. So after Pesach, they would put the stone back, and it would be ready for Shavuos, and after Shavuos, they would put the stone back, and it would be ready for Sukkot. So that, says Rabbi Gedalia Yeshua, is a hint to the Ne'ilas Hachag, to the sealing of the Yom Tov, the putting of the stone back to seal the well. Now this is a little bit hard to understand, because it really flies counter to everything we think should happen at the end of the Yom Tov. At the end of the Yom Tov, we always think, well, what are we going to take with us? What is going to last? And there's a certain truth to that. You don't want that the regal should just fade away. We want to take something with us, a memory, a thought, an inspiration. And over here, it seems that the symbolism is the opposite, that at the end of the regal, you put the stone, and you plug up the well. And that's it. And the stone remains in place until the next regal. As if to say that there's almost something which has to end. The regal is the regal, and now it's over. Plug it up. How do you understand that?
Where's Isser hung?
What?
Where's Isser hung?
So let it be a day after the regal. But the point is, but at some point, you put the stone there. So let's put this all in the back burner, and let's talk about something else. Because we know that in a regular year, a non-leap year, the Shabbos before Pesach is always Parshas Tzav. And in a leap year, as a rule, except for that very odd year where Rosh Hashanah is on a Thursday, where all the Parshas are in disarray, normally in a leap year, the Shabbos before Pesach is Parshas Mitzorah. And there's a lot of discussion in the commentators why this is. What's the connection of Tzav to Pesach? What's the connection of Mitzorah to Pesach? But there's another possibility which we have to contemplate. That it's not so much that the Shabbos before Pesach has to be Tzav or Mitzorah. Perhaps really it's set up that way because the Shabbos after Pesach has to be Shemini, or in the case of the leap year, Achrei Mos. Because obviously, it only works out if the Shabbos before Pesach is Tzav, and the Shabbos after Pesach is Shemini. If the Shabbos before Pesach is Mitzorah, then the Shabbos after Pesach is Achrei Mos. But it may be that the key is not the question of Tzav and Mitzorah being before Pesach. It may be that the whole order is set up in such a way that Shemini and Achrei Mos should be after Pesach. Now, to explain that, we would not need to give two explanations. For the Shemini and Achrei Mos both allude to the same historic event. Parsha Shemini, the most gripping story in Parsha Shemini, is the story of the death of the two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu. That's described in Parsha Shemini. And Achrei Mos, again, seemingly out of place, begins with an allusion to that. It says that God spoke to Moshe, Achrei Mos Shnei Bnei Aaron, after the deaths of the two sons of Aaron. So it seems that Shemini and Achrei Mos both echo this story, the story of the deaths of the sons of Aaron. And it may be that it's that story that we need to read after the regal. What's the point of that story? There's a Gemara. The Gemara says in Kedushin a very, very odd thing. It says, Sakfa Deshata Rigla. That the most ruined part, the most spoiled part of the year is the regal, is the Yom Tov. Sakva Deshata Rigla is the most spoiled part of the year. The most rotten part of the year is the regal. Why is that? So Rashi says, because, during the rest of the year, we have a regimen, there's a discipline, We get up in the morning, we go to work, we come back from work. There's a seder, there's an order. Comes the regel, we're off, we're free. We eat, we drink, we party, we celebrate. And a lot of people abuse that. A lot of people abuse that. Sometimes the men and women would find themselves in inappropriate settings, and that's what the Gemara says. Sakva the Shata Rigla. The ruined part of the year is the regal. The Yom Tif was not a spiritual occasion for all people. And by the way, this is the basis of a custom, a Jewish custom, not a widely practiced custom, but a Jewish custom, that after Pesach and after Sukkot, which are the major regalim, Shavuos is only 2 days. How much trouble can you get into in 2 days? But Pesach and Shavuos is much longer. So we have a fast after Pesach, after Shavuos. The Monday, Thursday, and Monday of Cheshvan, which is the month after Sukkot, and of Iyar, which is the month after Pesach, there was a custom to fast. This is called Bahab. And even places that don't fast still recite Slichas. Many have that custom to recite Slichas. And it was to atone for what may have gone wrong over the regal. Because this is what the Gemara says, the Sakva the Shata Rigla, the ruined part of the year is the regal. It seems a little bit odd. Like, why should that be? I mean, I understand why it happens. You know, you eat, you drink, you party, you know, things happen. But it just seems so strange that a time which has such a potential for spiritual elevation should somehow find itself degenerating and not realizing its promise. Why should that be? Why should that ever happen? Well, the answer is very, very, very simple. You see, when we serve the Ribono Shel Olam, we serve the Ribono Shel Olam in different modes, different ways. Most of the year we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a very, very well-defined structure, as we said, a regimen. And we have a daily schedule, and we get up in the morning, and we do this, and we do that, and we go to shul, and we daven, and we have our regular classes. Right? Every Monday night, 9 o'clock, you're here. Last week, God knows where you were Monday night. Right? Now, there's a normal seder, there's a normal order, there's a discipline that keeps you in line. When it comes to the regal, there's no structure, there's no order, you're on your own. It's a dangerous thing. On the other hand, it provides tremendous opportunity.
There is a structure.
It's different than the regular structure that we have the entire year. It's different. It's different. And it provides tremendous opportunities. It provides opportunities for independent thought. It provides opportunities for reflection. Sometimes when you're in the middle of the grind, the daily grind, every day, every week is the same, and it's like a machine that runs by itself. There's no time to think, to reflect. The regal provides that. But on the other hand, that lack of structure can be many people's downfall. If the structure, if the seder is what you need to keep you in line, so when you don't have that seder, things can fall apart. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and he told me an amazing, amazing thing. His name is Rav Moshe Kanner. I have to mention his name, because I'm going to tell you it was just a fantastic thing. I was talking about this idea to him, and he said, you know, he feels the same way. He feels the same way that, he's, when Yom Tov comes, Chol Hamoed, he's beside himself. He's disoriented, because he doesn't have his normal structure, his normal regimen. And he pointed out an amazing thing, that Gemara that I referred to a few moments ago, which says Sakva Dishata Rigla, that the rotten part of the year is the Regel. The Rosh Tevis, the first letters of those three words, Sakva Dishata Rigla, spell the word Seder. Samach Daled Reish, Seder, which means order. In other words, this issue of the Regel being the ruined part of the year is somehow related to this concept of Seder and structure. So what's the solution? What's the answer? How do you guarantee the Regel should achieve its promise? The answer is very simple. You see, if the entire year you live as a Jew within that structure, so you do your davening, and you do your learning, and you do your mitzvahs, and you follow the regimen, then we can give you some free time, and it will be productive, it will be inspired, it will be elevated, and so on and so forth. But if the Regel is the sum total of your Jewishness, if all you do is observe the Regel, that the entire year there's no davening, and there's no learning, and there's no mitzvahs, and there's no nothing. Now you come to Pesach, you come to Yontif, and now I'm going to be Jewish. Right? Then it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like, what do you do with your free time? What do you think about? If you haven't been studying and preparing and working for the whole year leading to Pesach, so when finally you have Pesach, like, what do you think about? What do you reflect about? You don't have the raw material with which to live an inspired life. So really, both are necessary. You have to have the structure, the regimen for the entire year, and then the freedom of the Regel, the break, then can be an inspired time, and an uplifting time, and a time where you have the raw material with which you can have an uplifted experience. But on the other hand, if the whole year is really neglect of spiritual values, so you come to the Regel, so now, okay, I'm not working, I have free time, I can but what is it going to be? What can it be without the preparation that is needed to make the Regel into what the Regel can be? Yes?
That comment from the Gemara, though, to whom does it apply? Because perhaps I would take issue with what you just said, vis-a-vis those that look at the Regel only. Really, they don't have a Halamoy. I mean, they get together and they have a family get-together. After that, there's nothing. There was nothing before, there's nothing after.
Just a Seder.
Just a Seder. But does the Gemara really refer to people of that background?
But let's not say that the Gemara is referring to anybody specific. Let's just say the Gemara is pointing out that a Regel is a time which is a challenge. It can achieve great heights, and conversely, it can bring you to great depths. In other words, it is not foolproof. It isn't that the Regel is good for everybody, and the Regel will provide an aliyah for everybody. It really depends on what you bring to the Regel. Yes?
It's kind of like showing us the extreme to make a point that at the time...
Yeah, it could be the worst. You know, to quote Dickens, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The potential exists for both. Because a Regel is not a simple thing. A Regel is not a simple thing. It's not that, it's good for everybody. It's like mother's milk. It's not. It can be people's downfall too. I mean, even Yom Kippur could be a person's downfall. Now, how many people have been turned off to religion by Yom Kippur? It happens. It happens. The person comes to Shul Yom Kippur, and this is his one day a year for religion. He comes in, he's bored out of his mind. Right? He finds it oppressive. It's torture. And that strengthens his resolve not to come back for sure until next Yom Kippur. Right? So it's not that Yom Kippur was a lofty experience, but he feels too much of a good thing is they don't want to overdo it. No, it was a miserable experience. It really was totally negative. Right? And it's a question of how you lived your year, which will determine what your Yom Kippur is like. And for a person who is serious about his Judaism for the entire year, Yom Kippur is a day that he'll savor and cherish. Right? For the person who the whole year has not lived a Torah life, a mitzvah life, the Yom Kippur can be a real downer, to say the least. So, this is what the Chazal are telling us, that the Shat Regla, that a regal has the potential to be the worst time of the year. And it really depends on the extent to which you live the disciplined life. But I think this is a point I want to emphasize, that it has to do with the fact that we don't have our normal structure, our normal seder, right, which tends to keep us in line. Chazal tell us, for example, the Yafa Talmud Torah Darchei, that learning Torah is good when it's coupled with the pursuit of a profession. Why? When you labor in both, you labor in learning Torah and in your profession, so you have no time to sin. That means that learning Torah is not necessarily enough. The average person can't learn Torah productively for 12 hours a day. A person can learn 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, but that leaves a lot of time. So what keeps him out of trouble? Learning Torah and work. Right? But if the regel is his vacation, so now he doesn't have that combination of Torah and Derech Eretz. He may only have Torah, no Derech Eretz. So there's plenty of time to get into trouble. The Seder of the week keeps me in line. The Seder of the months keep me in line. The regel is a potentially dangerous time. It all depends really on how you prepare for it. This is really, I think, the issue which underlies the whole story of Nadav and Avihu and the sons of Aaron. Let's recount the story. This was the day of the dedication of the Mishkan. It was a very great celebration, a very great joy. And it says that Nadav and Avihu take ish machtas, each person takes his fire pan, and they bring ketores, they bring incense, and the pasuk says an odd thing. The pasuk says, Hashem, they brought before the Lord eish zara, a foreign fire, asher lo tziva osam, that was not commanded to them. As Rashi explains, that ketores, incense, as a rule, can only be brought as an obligation. It cannot be brought voluntarily. Now, there are certain sacrifices you can bring them as an obligation. You can bring them as an adava, as a donation, as a voluntary offering. Ketores, as a rule, only comes as an obligation. It can't come as a voluntary sacrifice. Now, they weren't commanded. Asher lo tziva osam. They weren't commanded to bring ketores, but they brought ketores. Why did they bring ketores? They brought ketores because they understood the idea of ketores, and they understood if they really wanted to be close to God, this is the way to do it. They aspired for a certain intimacy, a certain bonding with God, a certain connection with God, and they felt the best way to facilitate that would be to offer ketores, but the ketores was not commanded to them. Now, this is important to understand, that as a rule, even halacha assumes this, a thing is permitted unless the Torah tells you otherwise. When someone comes and asks you, is a Jew allowed to eat pumpkin? And I say, yeah, a Jew can eat pumpkin. And the person says to me, show me in the Torah where it says a person can eat pumpkin. And there's no verse. There's no verse in the Torah. There's no place where it says in the Torah that a Jew is allowed to eat pumpkin. You don't need a verse. Anything which the Torah forbids, the Torah explicitly forbids. If the Torah doesn't explicitly forbid eating pumpkin, you can assume that's permitted. That's generally the rule. But if there's no reason to assume or to conjecture a prohibition, we don't invent prohibitions. Everything is permitted unless the Torah explicitly forbids it. That is outside of the Beis HaMikdash. That's outside of the Beis HaMikdash. That's on your home turf. On your home turf, everything is permitted unless God tells you otherwise. But in the temple, which is God's turf, it works the other way. You have to assume everything is prohibited unless God tells you explicitly that it's okay. Right? Because now you're not in your house, you're in God's house. So you got to play by His rules. So unless God tells you to do it, you have to assume that you can't do it. That's the assumption over here. So it says that they brought incense that they were not commanded to bring. And that's an assumption they should not have made. They shouldn't have assumed that, well, if God didn't tell us it's wrong, it must be that it's okay. In the Beis Hamikdash, in the Mishnah, it has to be that God tells you you're allowed to do it. So they brought this incense, and a terrible thing happened, that a fire came forth before God and consumed the two of them, and they died. And Moshe said to Aaron, Hu asher dibra Hashem lemor, this is what God had said, Bikrovaya kodesh, I will be sanctified with the deaths of those who are close to me. And Rashi says over here an amazing thing, that God had told Moshe Rabbeinu that the dedication of the Mishkan would be marked by the deaths of two tzaddikim. And Moshe assumed that it would be himself and Aaron. And when it turned out to be the two sons of Aaron, Nadav and Avihu, Moshe said, I see that they are greater than we are. They were the closest to God. They were the greatest. And their deaths marked the dedication of the Mishkan. But what is the idea? What is this idea that the dedication of the Mishkan should involve deaths? What was their motivation? Again, it's exactly this. You see, many people seek spiritual experience. They want to achieve some type of intimacy, some type of closeness to God, some type of ecstatic religious experience. They want to be uplifted, they want to be elated, they want to feel their souls are soaring high. This is what we all want, that type of subjective religious ecstasy. But that's not what it means to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu means to be obedient, to follow His rules, to follow His guidelines, to do as you're told, which is not quite the same thing. This is really why many Jews were enticed by Avodah Zarah. Now, it's an interesting thing, we've pointed out many times, that Avodah Zarah does not mean the worship of foreign gods. It means foreign worship, Avodah Zarah, foreign service, meaning that the nature of the service is different, which at first glance is a little bit of a puzzle. Because we would think the difference between our service of God and Avodah Zarah relates to the object of worship. We are meant to worship Hashem, and the Avodah Zarah worship Baal, they worship Hashem, they worship different deities. Because I want to tell you there's something else over here. It's the nature of the worship which is different. It's the nature of the service. In other words, the nature of Avodah Zarah is anything goes. If it'll give you a thrill, a spiritual high, you didn't do it. Take the animal, slice it open, remove the entrails, whatever they would do. If it'll turn you on, if it'll be thrilling and exciting, then by all means do it. But the Beis Hamikdash, on the other hand, required obedience. It required discipline. This is the law. This is the way it should be done. And there are tremendous limitations which the Torah places on the way in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu is to be worshipped. First of all, you can't do it just anywhere you want. It has to be a very specific place. Now that is a big damper on spontaneity. Spontaneity would call for doing it wherever and whenever you want. Right? If God tells you, no, only certain times, not other times, only certain places, not other places, that means there's the discipline you have to follow. It can't be spontaneous. You have to follow the law. And Rashi says this in Parshas Vayikra, when it says that the korbanos are reach nicholach, they're a pleasing fragrance to God. So Rashi says, what does it mean, nicholach? What does it mean, a pleasing fragrance? Nachas ruach l'fanai. God says, I have a satisfaction. Shalmarti v'nasa v'tzayni. I spoke and my will was done. Because the satisfaction that God has from korbanos is the satisfaction of our obedience. We did it exactly as we were told. And this means exercising restraint. It means that we don't practice the korbanos or the avoda in order to achieve a thrill or a spiritual high, right? It's a measured, disciplined ritual. We follow the rules, we follow the guidelines. And, anybody who learns the Masechtas and the Gemara, Masechtas Zvachim, Masechtas Menachos, finds that there are a lot of details. There are a lot of laws. The letter of the law has to be followed. We're not talking about something which is performed with a burst of creativity or, you know what I mean? Like excitement. It's paint by the numbers. You got to follow the law. This is how you do it. You do it this way. This is the procedure, and that's the way it's meant to be. And none of you violated that. Right? They were seeking this type of ecstasy, this type of closeness to God, and they said, "We'll cut corners. We'll do something which isn't commanded of us." And they met a terrible fate. Now, in their defense, I'll share with you an amazing thing that the Sfas Emes says. Now, it says in the parasha that Moshe spoke to Aaron and Eliezer and Isamar, the surviving brothers, and he told them that don't observe any of the laws of mourning for Nadav and Avihu. He says, Roshechem al tifro, don't let your hair grow, V'dechem lo sifro, don't tear your clothing. Rashi explains because it was the day of the dedication of the Mishkan, so the celebration should not be blemished by observances of mourning. V'achechem kol beis Yisrael, but your brothers, the entire house of Israel, yivku es hasveif asher saraf Hashem, they shall cry. So God told Aaron and his sons, you're not going to mourn, but the Bnei Yisrael should mourn. So why should they mourn? It's not their relative. I mean, these are Aaron's children, Eliezer and Isamar's brothers. Why should they're not going to mourn? Okay, that we understand because we don't want to detract from the celebration of the dedication of the Mishkan. But why should everyone else mourn? So Rashi says, because you see from here that Sarasan Shel Talmidei Chachamim Mutelas Al HaKol L'Savo. That when a Talmid Chacham suffers a loss, everyone should feel the loss. Okay, as Rashi says. The Sfas Emes says an amazing thing over here. He says like this. He says that Nadav and Avihu really were right. They really were right. They were on such a lofty madrega. They were on such a lofty level that their intuition that this is okay was correct. Really was correct. This is something that would give pleasure to God. But as role models, they weren't allowed to do this because everyone would try to imitate them. And this is one of those things, like they tell you, don't try this at home. Right? In other words, their spiritual intuition was excellent. So if they felt that it was something that could be done, it could be done. But they shouldn't do it nevertheless because other people try to imitate them. But you can't do something which other people will try to copy. I'll give you an example, a very funny story. There's a certain rabbi in a certain city, I won't mention the rabbi's name or the city, who is like an expert in kashrus, in industrial kashrus. He can look at a bag of candy, read the code, and tell you that this candy was produced on this day in this factory. That particular day, a kosher company had kashered the plant for their run, and therefore this candy really also is kosher. It's just it was the surplus that the kosher company didn't need it, so it was bagged in the regular non-kosher bags. But I happen to know that it's kosher because that day it was kosher. In fact, in his shul, he would give out treif candies, right? And they tell people that I know that day Pashkas kashered the plant, and they didn't buy all the candy that day, so the rest of it was bagged in this other company, and it's really kosher. That day it was kosher. Right? But the point is that, to me, it would seem as an public policy, you shouldn't do that. Why? Because, okay, you can read the code and you know, but the next person will say, Rabbi such and such gave out that brand of candy. I'll also see that brand of candy, and most days that brand of candy is not kosher. So it's the same thing with another one of you, says the Sfasevas, that their spiritual intuition was on target, but other people would say, listen, if they can do things that they weren't commanded to do, we can do things we weren't commanded to do, and it'll also be fine. So therefore God said it was a mistake on their part, and they were punished. But it comes out that really, why did they have to be punished? It was because of the Bnei Yisrael. It was because the people that would copy them, would emulate them. And that's why they had a chiyuv to mourn, because in some sense it was really their fault that none of them who died. That's what Sfasema says. Very, very, very amazing idea. But this is the idea of the story. The idea of the story is that rather than being satisfied with the regimented, disciplined service of the temple, they sought this spiritual ecstasy which is beyond that which the halacha requires. Now, it's a very interesting thing that Rashi quotes a Chazal that there were other sins involved in what Adam Review did. One sin is that they went into the temple having drunk wine. And the other is that they did not consult with Moshe and Aaron, and therefore they violated the prohibition of being more halacha b'fnei Rabbah. They gave a halachic ruling in the presence of their masters without consulting their masters. Now the question is, pardon?
What was the ruling?
That they could do this. They were allowed to do this. Now the question is that the Torah is explicit. It tells us what their sin was. Their sin was they brought this foreign Ketores. Why do we look for other possibilities, other sins, other faults? And we pointed out in the past that really Chazal are just pointing out these two additional aspects, because really this gives us clarity as to what the issue with the Ketores was. See, let's think about it for a second. If you are seeking an emotional experience, right? What might you drink before the experience? You might drink wine. Wine is the fuel of the emotion. But if you want to do something by the book, you want to be able to know that I did it perfectly in accordance with the rules, what would you want to drink before doing it?
Coffee.
Like a cup of coffee. Something that will make you alert, right? Now this is exactly the issue. Because if you're seeking emotional ecstasy, there's nothing better than wine puts you in the frame of mind for emotional experience. If you want to know that you did it by the book, so you want your mind to be very, very sharp, so maybe, take a cup of coffee, right? And that'll sharpen up. But wine is the last thing you want to take. And that's what the Torah says. The Torah says the reason that a Kohen cannot drink wine is lahavdil, in order to differentiate ben atamei and ben atar, to differentiate between that which is pure and that which is not pure. Meaning a Kohen doing the avoda has to be alert and able to discern whether what he did was the right way or the wrong way. Right? If you're interested in emotional experience, it's relevant whether it's the right way or the wrong way. The question is, how did it affect me? And therefore wine would be the best thing to do. So when the Torah says they drank wine, or Chazal said they drank wine, what Chazal are pointing out is that they were seeking this emotional experience, therefore of course they had wine. Now the other question is like this. Let's say, for example, you are seeking an emotional experience. Does it really make sense to ask someone else's advice? Now, something which is totally subjective, no one can answer that question for you. You know, go to a person and say, like, if I, eat this, you think I'll enjoy it?
Maybe it's your one.
Yeah, maybe you will, maybe you won't. But like, that's something that only you can decide. I can't tell you that you're going to enjoy this. The professional critics, claim to be able to do that. How often are the critics wrong? Right? In other words, they review a restaurant and they pan the restaurant, and you go to the restaurant and it was pretty good. Or they tell you that a film is no good. You see the film, I enjoyed it. Right? Maybe the problem with them is they see so many films and eat at so many restaurants, like nothing is good anymore. But for the occasional night out, it was fine. It was good. Good time. So the point is this: that but if you want to know, did I comply with the rules? Then you want to ask the expert, right? Is this the right way? Is this the wrong way? The fact that there were Moira Halakha B'fnei Rabba, Moshe and Aaron are there. They could consult with Moshe and Aaron, and they don't consult with them. Means they're not interested in following the rules. They're interested in how it'll affect them. Right? That's exactly the point. That was the error. That was the error. So the whole story of Nodam and Avihu is this mistake, if you will, of instead of understanding that the Avodas Hashem has to be something which is disciplined, and there's a seder, and there's a structure, and there are rules which have to be followed, they wanted to turn the Avodas Hashem into something that was emotional, something that was an ecstatic experience, and of course this was the error. And therefore the whole story is a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale about the very nature of the avodah of the Beis Hamikdash, and that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu, that the Mishnah will be sanctified with deaths of people who will make this mistake. In other words, people will only get the lesson straight when they understand that the consequences of this mistake are so severe that we're talking about something which is unforgivable. Then they'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. And again, this is a tremendous chiddush, because in the Avodah Zarah it wasn't that way. In the Avodah Zarah it was all about what you get out of it. Like, does it turn you on? Does it excite you? Does it thrill you? And here we're talking about something else. We're talking about discipline. We're talking about regimen. We're talking about order. We're talking about following the rules. And that's something which you don't intuit right off the bat. So therefore, the lesson has to be driven home that this is a mistake which is a capital offense. Yeah?
Is the command by some the people who will be killed are people who are particularly close to God?
Sure. And that's exactly the point. No,
so in a sense,
none of you, their religious sentiments are very, very noble. They seek great, great closeness to God. In other words, people who don't care, right, wouldn't stick their neck out in this way. Now, these are people that yearned very, very deeply for a very deep connection with God.
Did they achieve it?
Did they achieve it? According to the Psukim, they made a fundamental error in what it means to serve God. And to serve God does not mean, right, to achieve a state of ecstasy. It means to follow the rules. It means to be obedient. It means to keep within the lines. That's what it means.
Did they even know the rules?
And they knew that this was something which was not commanded to them, right?
Could this have been somewhat at the root of the machloket between the Hasidic movement and the documentary?
Well, I think, let's put it this way. I think that the Misnagdim certainly leveled this accusation against the Hasidim, right, without getting into the question of whether it was justified or not, right? But I think certainly this was what the Misnagdim accused the Hasidim of doing. If not explicitly, implicitly. In other words, that they were placing an emphasis on emotional experience and so on and so forth, as opposed to diktuk, precision in the terms of the halacha. Let me give you an example. One of the criticisms of the Hasidim was that they were not precise in observing the times of prayer. Now you have to understand that in the olden days, if a chassid davened at 10 o'clock in the morning, or 11 o'clock in the morning, or at 12 noon, or he davened shachris at 1 in the afternoon, it was not because that's when he rolled out of bed. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people that were up before the crack of dawn. Before the crack of dawn. But they said, you don't just daven, you almost have to prepare. So how long did it take to prepare? So sometimes it took 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours, sometimes 4 hours, sometimes it only taken 6 hours. So it may be that they didn't feel they were adequately prepared till 12 noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's when you daven shachris. But the halacha doesn't say that. The halacha is you have to daven shachris within a certain time. So they said, but if I daven shachris at 9 o'clock without the proper preparation, it'll be empty. I won't feel anything. It'll be totally drained. So the Misnagid says, so what? But that's the law. You got to do it during this time, right? So when you study some of the ancient lore, you find amazing things. There was a certain Rebbe, the Kamarna Rebbe, who allegedly said like this. He said that the Gemara tells us that there were 3,000 halachas that were forgotten during the period of mourning for Moshe Rabbeinu. So one of the 3,000 halachas was that if you're not adequately prepared, you can daven late. But think about that for a moment. And what are the other 2,999 halachas that were forgotten? You can do almost anything, justify anything on that basis. And there's a very lovely mashal when the Imri Emes, Rabbi Mordechai, became the Ger Rebbe after the passing of Sfas Emes. So he changed the order among the Ger Hasidim. Until that point, they also davened late, because the Ger comes from Kutsk, and Kutsk davened late, and he changed the order that he started davening Bisman in the proper time. So the old Hasidim were grumbling. When his father davened late, he has to be better than his father. So one of the old Hasidim gave him a mashal. So there once was a man that got married, and his wife used to cook gourmet meals every night. It was a culinary masterpiece, but it was always late. But he never complained, because he knew that it was going to be something special. After a while, she got tired of cooking these gourmet meals, and she started very simple food: borscht, potatoes, kasha. And one night he says to her, why is supper always late? Why can't you serve supper on time? So she said, you never complained until now. So he said, until now you were making those masterpiece gourmet meals. It was worth waiting for, but if you're serving borscht and potatoes, at least it could be on time. Right? So this Rebbe said like this, says, our forebears prayed such warm, lofty tefillas. It's okay, it was late. It's worth waiting for. He says, our tefillas are so cold, so at least it could be on time. That's the motion they gave. But, all these types of things are attitudes which to the person who thinks in terms of keeping the rules, following the guidelines, they just don't ring true. Well, I'm going to be deliberately late because it's going to be better, warmer, more fervent, more uplifting. You gotta follow the rules. It's like the joke, and every joke has a kernel of truth to it, which is that the Hasidim are fearful of the Ribono Shel Olam, and the Misnagdim are fearful of Shkia, the sunset. You want to make sure you're not in the middle for sunset. Whatever it is. But I think this certainly was, from the Misnagdim's perspective, an accusation against the Hasidim.
Aren't some of these metaphors weak? Because with Nadav and Avihu, we're actually talking, as you put it, in God's territory. Everything else that's happening is...
Yeah, that may be. Again, so this would be the response, answer back and so on and so forth. But I think that the idea is a similar idea. So, getting back to our topic, says this is what we have to know. We have to know that, the avoda of a regel, the avoda of a yontif, in many ways lends itself, is very dangerous. As we said, it's not the regular schedule, not the regular regimen, right? There are more opportunities for celebration and song and joy and singing and dancing and so on and so forth, as opposed to the regular discipline of the entire year. And therefore, a regal can be a time of very, very lofty spiritual ascent. On the other hand, it can be a time which has tremendous dangers, as we explained. So when the regal is over, we have to understand that the hanhaga of a regal, it's not in the ideal world the whole year would be a regal. You can't have a whole year, 365 days of consecutive regal. That can't be. A year without structure, without discipline, filled with celebration, eating, drinking, feasting, that is not a year which is going to bring us closer to the Ribono Shel Olam in any significant way. Right? A week regal, which is the culmination of months of preparation, I don't mean preparation, conscious preparation, but preparation because we daven and we learn and we do mitzvahs and we are engaged in spiritual pursuits, and now we come to the regal, which is a time of celebration. That can be a lofty spiritual experience. But the regal only makes sense, it only can do what it does because it is the culmination of the months of preparation which preceded, right? And therefore, when the regal is over, you have to put the stone back on the well, so to speak. You have to understand, okay, the regal is over, we enjoyed it, we gained from it, we learned important lessons, we're still going to carry them forward, but we understand that the regal has to end. The stone is back on the well. Now we're back to our regular schedules. We're back to our regular tefillas. We're back to our regular learning schedule. So the mitzvahs that we do regularly. Because otherwise the next regal won't be the next regal. The next regal won't be the next regal because we put the stone on this regal and we go back to our normal seder, our normal order. So we go back and forth between the months of preparation and then the regal, the months of preparation and then the regal. In Sifrei Chasidus it says we're saying which about Shabbos. That Shabbos is really only a Shabbos because we've worked 6 days. Tzadok HaKohen says, when it says in the pasuk, Sheishes Yamim Taber V'Sisukom Lachtecha, 6 days you should work, and on the 7th day is Shabbos. So he says, you make a mistake. They think that means there's a mitzvah to work. There's a mitzvah to do labor, to work with your hands, to earn a livelihood. That's no mitzvah, that's a curse. Adam Rishon got a curse. By the sweat of your brow, you'll eat bread. It says, when it says in the pasuk that 6 days a week you're going to work, it means avodas Hashem. It means 6 days you daven, and 6 days you learn Torah, and 6 days you do mitzvahs, and then Shabbos takes it to a higher level. But if the entire week is devoid of spiritual pursuits, then even Shabbos won't be what Shabbos is meant to be. Right? A Shabbos is not meant to be a Shabbos where 1 day a week I devote to God, and the other 6 days of the week I'm, for all intents and purposes, an atheist. It means 6 days I'm engaged in avodas Hashem, and then Shabbos takes it to the next level. So this is the idea, and therefore it could be that it's the references to Narav Naviyu, right? This is the cautionary tale that we read after Pesach, whether it's Shemini in a regular year or Achinos in a leap year. We read these parashas to remind us of Narav Naviyu, to understand that this was the error they made, and we have to go back to our, if not necessarily exciting, but our disciplined practice of Torah, mitzvahs, learning Torah, avodas Hashem, and that holds out the hope that the next regal will then be an opportunity for Aliyah, which we can take to the next level, having devoted the months of preparation appropriately. Okay, so those are some thoughts about the end of Pesach. I hope that it was meaningful for everyone, and as Hashem, we're counting ahead to Shavuos. I won't say what night it is tonight, if you didn't count yet. And Be'ez Hashem, it should be a time of solid preparation, so that the next regal that comes, we can roll the stone off and drive that inspiration on the highest level. There you go.